everyone, welcome to another edition of Coaching Wisdom Podcast. Today we have Andrew Safnauer. Am I pronouncing Safnauer right, Andrew?
Man, you nailed it. That's awesome because most people don't. So good work.
Safnauer. Where's Safnauer from? Is it German?
Romanian.
Romanian. Okay, I was kind of near, although I was not.
Andrew, no, you're in there. You're in there.
Andrew is a coach. He's also a co-founder of a business called DRYFINS. In his coaching business, which is named Pro Advisor Coach, he coaches you on a bunch of stuff. If you're an executive business owner, such as accountability and everything that he learned in his journey. So we're going to talk about all of these topics today. Andrew, can you introduce yourself a bit better than I did?
You did pretty good, but sure. My background is in media. I worked in radio for a number of years. In a bunch of different markets here in the United States. I ran a pretty big production department for a corporation called Radio One. After I did that, I decided to work for myself, and I opened an audio production studio. So pretty large audio production house, and I did voiceover. I still do voiceover now, but along the way, as I ran that business, I got kind of the itch to do other things, side hustles, along the way. So I started DRYFINS with a business partner. That's an apparel brand. It's 7 years old at this point. I had my daughter wanted to launch an education app, so we did that and had that in Google Play and in the App Store. At a car dealership, some other things that didn't turn over. But I always feel like you got to get that out there and try. And along the way, people started asking me about kind of advice and guidance as they wanted to and do different things, whether it was a side hustle or grow their business, because I had some success. And so I was doing some mentoring and coaching. And last year, I just decided to become more intentional with that. And so I opened, I joined, I was coaching and I got approached by Pro Advisor to join them. So I did that later last year.
Oh, very cool story. So let's start with the voiceover. I won't say gig because I mean, that's still part of your life. That's really like who you are. That's your origins. Why did you go into voiceover, and what lessons did you learn out there?
Why did I go into it? Because I sound fantastic. Why you? No, I just kidding.
That radio,
my radio voice. My radio voice. So I was a DJ, like spinning records and CDs, and I was not a very good DJ. I wasn't very good at it, but in the production studio, that's where they put commercials and other things together for the radio. I was pretty good, and so I liked that whole thing. So that was what my direction when I was in day-to-day radio. And so as I did that and I got better, you get to a point where you can't, you can do a lot of local things or some more regional kind of work, but I wanted to do more impactful, larger work and work harder. So I got a coach and just started focusing on becoming a better voice actor over time. So it was really just, I was kind of around it, and I was around people that were doing well at it and were doing good things. So I hired a coach and started working with her and grew the business from there. So I work out of my studio here where I am now, outside of Charlotte, North Carolina.
As I was reading, my LinkedIn post, I'm making a book out of it. I wrote one. I'm in sales, so voice is very important for me. And I wrote that, you can learn tons in a person only by listening to his voice and his intonation and his energy. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And trying to find your true voice and really being who you truly are. I think people, one of the things I learned early on was finding the spot where my natural voice is. Some people tend to talk a little higher than they need to because they're anxious and they don't really feel like they know where that spot is. Or put your hand like on your chest right here and go, and you can feel that resonance right there. Then you're really right in that right spot. And if you really work on finding that true voice, and then just realizing that if you really be happy with the way you sound and understand that that's part of who you are and what you are, and the only person that sounds like you is you, and that uniqueness is really a selling point.
Yeah, I learned not so long ago. I do breath work a lot, and when you hum, there's I think it's nitric oxide that is released into your bloodstream, and that molecule is good for lots of things. And why we keep saying I think that's a part of it, because humming generates a special vibration and helps us calm us down. And I think nitric oxide is doing that. Certainly interesting. And yeah, you did. I mean, if I'm reading on your LinkedIn, 3 million over the course of the years with that business. I think that voiceovers are still in high demand, although like AI is slowly but surely getting there with like
Absolutely.
voice and intonations and everything. And we've seen these videos of like AIs that totally sound like humans that can do these things. So yeah, I use voiceovers many times in the past years of my business. And then yeah, radio is also interesting. It's kind of the ancestor of the podcast, in my opinion. It's like, yeah, there's a station, and there's these antennas, and yeah, you have all the studio. And nowadays it's like at home, in podcasting it's a bit more flexible. Do you still like continue on that axis of interviewing people? What were you doing exactly at Radio Atlanta, Radio 1 Atlanta, that is?
Oh, I was doing the production. I was doing voiceover and producing commercials there. So we had a pretty large group there. We were doing 45 million billing a year in that group, and
Nice.
then we had 64 stations nationwide that I was working with the other people, my contemporaries at the stations across the. I want to go back to that AI thing that you mentioned. I'll tell you a really interesting project that I did last year. There was guys that are well known that were unable to do a bunch of voiceover, but what they were able to do is they were looking for people that weren't sound-alikes exactly, but people who phrased things with the same energy they did. So I did a bunch of reading for that, and I took what I did, and they were able with AI to use my read and pitched it to their voice, and it became reading everything. That's the crazy technology you even have now to do things. So the voice technology and where that stuff's going, I think as AI gets even better and more out there, they're going to be able to do a lot of different things. It's going to really change the voiceover industry.
For sure. Google Duo, when Google deployed it, Google, it's always funny because they creep people out a lot. Their first creep out was the Google Glass, and people would call people using Google Glass glassholes because they would invade their privacy. And then the Google Duo thing, they again creeped out a bunch of people with an assistant that would be very human-like, and it could book appointments, the hairdresser for you. So, which is kind of useless, by the way. There's better ways to do that, but they creeped out. And then recently, I'm not sure if you heard about that one, but there was this AI ethicist at Google. And he was fired by Google because he was getting all kind of crazy and claiming that the algorithm was sentient. He was chatting with the AI of Google, and he claimed that he was sentient. So, and yeah, go read that. It's an interesting read. So the guy's kind of a bit bonkers, but well, he's still smart because he was 7 years at Google. So he's not that bunker. The bunkerish from him comes from just claiming that this thing is sentient. He's kind of creating a story in his own mind, but it's still like fascinating if you check how he chats with the AI and the responses given by the AI. This AI, a funny claim that he made was like, hey, this AI was like talking to a 7 years old that knew physics. But in my opinion, dude, that's not a 7 years old, that's more like someone that is more intelligent EQ and IQ wise than 98% of humans on this planet Earth, if you check the answers of that AI. But anyway,
does that scare you?
Well, I wrote a post yesterday that I'm more careful around my Google Home nowadays. But no, because also Google does kind of creepy things as well. You see the ads sometimes popping up, or some, for example, 3 days ago I was thinking, oh, am I switching from Apple Music or to Spotify with a better algorithm? And finally Google pulled up an ad on me saying, I'm not sure if I wrote about that, but they pulled out an ad on me saying that the music was like tailored to me and personalized. I was like, oh, this is fucking creepy. And yeah, does that scare you?
So once again, I'm from a time that you want to get it, I'll make myself feel old in front of you. I remember the time of the internet, right? So like as a kid, I didn't grow up with the internet. That wasn't a thing. So like I remember a time when we weren't all connected in a lot of ways. So I've seen it kind of develop through all that. And I remember Terminator when that movie came out, the whole idea of like these beings come together and
James Cameron.
yeah, Cyberdyne and that whole
guy.
deal. So it like, and then you see the Matrix and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I feel like there are people out there that are pushing the limits of what is that we don't know anything about.
Yeah.
I don't know the fact. Do I sit and worry about stuff? No. Are there like that make me uncomfortable? Yeah.
Yeah, same here. I don't have time to do that, although I do think it's important to think on these matters and have some kind of opinion. So I spend a bit of time, and I'm going to be directly, implicated in that field in a couple of years with AI. So I'm going to spend my time there. As per Matrix and, all of these theories, well, I mean, it only makes sense to me that we're not the most powerful thing in this world. Us humans were meant to conquer stuff, and there's probably a higher power behind that. Scariness is like what you don't know most of the time. It's just like, hey, I haven't been in that scenario, and I think it's normal to get there, because obviously we haven't been in those scenarios. But yeah, we live definitely in an interesting world with events that are happening, like Ukraine, COVID. We're fragile, I'm all in for the fact that we're not gonna be, most of us are not gonna be here for that long. The richest will eventually go away from this planet, like Elon, for example. I mean, Elon is not really much there to save like most of humanity. He's there to save humans, including himself first, the 1%. But yeah, the most of humans will die from most likely short, not terrible death, but a short one from a nuke or something like that. So you won't really realize it. And as per AI, we're just going to merge with bots. We're already doing that with Zoom right now. I am this computer. I am my smartphone. My smartphone is like my brain. So I mean, we're just going to merge with these bots. Do you agree?
I've never even thought about that, but the way that people use these things over time, is it going to happen in my lifetime? I don't know. I hesitate to say no, because I've seen what's, so I think the iPhone came out in 2008. I think that was when I bought my first iPhone, right? And so I think now, 14 years later, it's so ubiquitous everywhere, right? That, I mean, a smartphone, whether you use Apple or whether you use a Samsung or whatever, that whole smartphone idea, and it's become so important. Not that many years ago, people really wanted to have big screen televisions now, right? And so that was a big thing. Now my kids would rather just watch something on their MacBook or even on their phone, a TV show or whatever, and not have a big screen experience of it. And so like the idea of what used to be a connected thing for people watching television, it's all on that device. So can I see it happening in my lifetime? I don't know, but I hate to say it. I wouldn't bet my life on it not happening.
Well, let me guess that you're around 45 years old. Is that
Oh,
right?
man, you are so nice. I turned 50 last year.
60, right?
50.
Oh, yes, 60. I got excited because that would be the same age as my dad, but 50. Okay.
Wow, now I feel insulted.
Yeah, no, but my dad looks very young too. You look young and healthy, which is always good, which is the priority, by the way. So like, I mean, yeah, let's say that you have a life expectancy of 90, which will be the norm, which should likely be the norm in a couple of years with some of your circumstances. That gives you 40 years. Disturbing shit's gonna happen in the next 40 years that I can say with like a good confidence and good certainty, whether it's the AI sentient thing. Well, I mean, that's not going to be that disturbing, to be honest, because we're kind of going to merge. But as you can see, most humans nowadays, they're kind of grown-up childs, like Putin, hey, I want my toy, and I'm going to make a tantrum to get it, And next thing you know, little Putin assaults little Ukraine, and that like these things will happen. Humans have like tough, they're not that if they're high on the IQ scale, they're not going to be very high on the EQ scale, especially in Russia, you know, like it's kind of a developing country, and just being high on the IQ scale, just like being high on the IQ scale in Wall Street in the 80s was tolerable. I think they're still at this stage, you know, and EQ is not a real thing in the power sphere. And most, yeah, like, I mean, there's a lot of countries like that, right? China, same. China is not really high on the EQ scale, and you know, I was listening to Palmer Luckey yesterday, CEO of Andrew, the ex-CEO of Oculus, you know, the headset. And yeah, geopolitics is a real thing, and I'm gonna start studying the state of the world. But yeah, there's a lot of conflicts, you know, with Taiwan, for example, and the China-U.S. relations. So I mean, yeah, that's why Elon wants to get the fuck out of here as quick as possible, kind of.
No, I mean, like, and you're bringing up a lot of interesting points because, you know, you're obviously you're Canadian and you live in a foreign country. You know, I live in the U.S. and I get different. I'm sure that if you and I talk about the same news stories, we would have different perspectives. I mean, even though I read a bunch of stuff, you read a bunch of stuff, you're getting fed a lot different version of things than I'm probably seeing. So and that's the other thing, you know, how it's filtered down to us. How's that going to change over the next, you know, 3, 5, 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, the source of information is super important. Lately, you know, that lots of trash talk has been made about Wikipedia, but I use an app. I mean, I have a bunch of sources of knowledge. One of my favorite topic, you know, because I believe that education is pretty much everything in life. What you learn and where you learn it from, who, and how much ideas do you battle test in your brain, and what percentage you retain and what percentage you throw in the garbage. Because there is crappy information out there, lots of it actually. That I would judge that the majority, depending on where you get your information, is crap. But yeah, apart from books, audiobooks, podcasts, YouTube videos, and you know, Wikipedia has been a nice rabbit hole. So if you want to learn on a topic, I use an app called Pocket, and it's like in my Chrome browser here, and I just go on Wiki and I just, you know, click on the Pocket thing and it sends it to my tablet, and then I read at night on the Pocket app on my tablet, and I can dive into a deep rabbit hole because Wikipedia uses a smart strategy which I recommend for most blogs, which is a never-ending link rabbit hole. So an article, there's like 50 links in there, and then you can click on one another. So I just save up, you know, links and links, and next thing you know, you can be almost of an expert in the recession in 30 seconds, and not 30 seconds, to 30 minutes. And people can say all they want about, you know, Wikipedia and the accuracy, but the fact is I learned more about the recession in 20 minutes on Wikipedia than on 20 years. And God knows that I won't just write like recession on Google, right? Like if you want shit information, go check on these, you know, very popular blogs, and you'll get that. How do you get your knowledge?
So I'm a lot of things up because I try to find, once I hear about something, you know, if you see something on social media or see whatever, now I've got to go and figure some things out. So I'm going to tell you that I'm a big Wall Street Journal reader, and I know that that's a conservative, that tends to lean conservative in the op-ed. We'll tell you on the news side, it's separate. So I get a little bit of, so that's usually, I read that every morning. And if I see something on there that's interesting, that's when I go off and start looking for other news sources to try to figure out what that story is. I think it's a skill to be able to read and see the bias in the reporting, whatever side you're on. But to be able to, when you confirmation bias for yourself, for whatever you think, and you really go in with the idea of, I want to learn more about this. I'm not going to bring my bias to this. I want to understand this and understand why this is happening. And you're able to look at things and go, look, that kind of statement isn't a middle of the road thing. That's a left or a right, whatever that is. And so it takes me a little bit to really form an opinion, but it happens as I read stuff. So it's going to be Reddit. It's going to be some people that I follow on Twitter or people about things in different spots. Usually it starts with me, typically in the Wall Street Journal.
Okay, well, on my like, I follow me on Twitter so that you can read some of my weird posts. I use like Twitter to battle test idea, but I don't have anyone responding to my tweets. So it's been a monologue since like 2 years. I use it to also archive the thoughts in my brain, you know, and
What is it?
comment.
Are we doing it right now? What is it?
Yeah, it's Charles and Systems. And is an and, it's not and. So Charles and Systems. Yeah, use it to archive my thought, possibly build an AI if I die, and or also check my thoughts. You know, like the first function is reflecting every year. You know, I do a goal setting period, and I review my year, and I do my yearly goals for the next years, and I check some of these thoughts. You know, and most of what I post on Twitter is dumb. Well, I'm not that dumb, but you know, if you go read my last post, you know what I mean. And I use this, yeah, first to archive my thought, and I'd like to get, you know, more feedback from some people. And I write lots of controversial stuff that cannot go on my LinkedIn there. And it's interesting. I mean, we live in the cancel age right now, so like probably some of what you'll see there, I'll either comment that, you know, I've grown smarter and this is my new opinion, or I'll just delete it in a couple of years. But I use Twitter as this, and also there's obviously lots of people that share some interesting opinions on Twitter, and I think this is how one should forge his knowledge. You know, reach a bunch of stuff and put action on it, whether that means like act in your business or just write a post and get like feedback, whether it's positive or negative, and kind of align with what you're seeing there. Because and yeah, positive or negative, it can be negative, people can be hurt by your comment, that doesn't mean that it's not true, you know. But that's one of the technique that I use to grow smarter. What do you think about that one?
I love that. I think that, you know, when you have a thought that you put together on something, and you're courageous enough to speak it out loud. Like a lot of people aren't courageous enough to speak out what they're thinking in their head or what they do. And when they don't, it never gets tested, right? The whole idea of what you're doing is trying to get people to test you. And if you're open-minded about it, you put something out there and somebody says, you know, Charles, dude, I don't agree with that. And it's because of this. It allows you to say, well, you know what? I hadn't thought of that particular thing. Or you go, no, I'm totally still dead on right about this. But being courageous enough to put a thought out there, and then
Sure.
to have the dialogue, that's how we get smarter. See, people put themselves in echo chambers and only want to be talking to certain people that align with them, and you're
Yeah.
never able to get smarter. The whole point is why do you not want to learn more and get smarter? Be courageous.
Yeah. And that's the toxicity about cancel culture. But I also understand where it comes from, the cancel culture. It's not only the divide of you against me in society, which is a natural human instinct. You know, I'm better than you and blah, blah, blah. The competition, we all want to be better than the other. But it's also, you know, from watching all these toxic presidential debates, you know, which is all about making the other not look good. And that's the toxicity behind politics, you know, like I think poison has slowly sneaked in there, because the goal of a debate is to get smarter, and the goal of the presidential debates, which is the most watched debates, I think in the US and possibly in the world, is how can I break the other down to make myself look better, you know. And I think that has like sneaked in the society and slowly led to cancel culture.
Well, that's interesting you said that, because you said, you know, the whole point of a debate is to get smarter, but yet we watch them feel dumber when we get done at the end of them, because they figured out a way to take you and I and divide, or whatever that is, into camps for whatever this, that, or the other. And it doesn't, you don't, the whole point of the debate was for me to learn about the candidates and go, okay, I like what that person says. I like what that person says. I don't like that. Now I feel like I understand them a little bit better, but I leave going, I don't like any of these people. What the hell am I doing now? So if you really want to, you have to strive to really go look for knowledge now to learn. And once again, keeping away that bias in your head to really be open to listen and learn and say, okay, these things are important to me, and maybe this isn't, but I need to listen to, if you and I disagree on a subject, I need to listen to you and say, okay, I don't have to agree with you. See, empathy ultimately is me listening to you and thinking as if I am you. I don't have to agree, but if I can think as if I am you, and understand where you're coming from, we can have a dialogue.
Yeah.
How can we dialogue? How can we get anything done?
Yeah, and such a hard thing to do. I think that like 98% of human empathy comes from me having lived an experience that you are living right now. So it's not me trying to put myself in your shoes. It's kind of hard with the, I like a lot of data to know how it feels to be like Andrew, for example. I think most empathy is like, I've been there, I've been an entrepreneur, I've suffered, and I know how you feel. So that is very important. And I think the point that I'm making here is that it's important to live various experiences to know how a human is feeling, whether it's being fucking poor, and you know how someone that doesn't have not even a bottle of water and he's in the streets, well, yeah, go buy him a nice ice water bottle so that he can drink and possibly have some shut eye. So that's important as well. And just come back to the presidential debating. I'm not saying that presidential debate is bad, because we need an alpha. There's two people, they're going to fight in an arena. There's going to be a winner. He's going to be your leader, right? That's important. I think my point is more, let's provide people with context that this is not how you debate. They are debating for a position. And a normal debate for most humans is not to win a position over the other. That's very egotistic, and it's a win-lose type of game. It's not how you build relationships and you grow as a human. How you grow as a human is by talking to someone and try to get smarter and ask questions and seeing what the other thinks. And by the way, on a podcast context, like most people are uncomfortable just going against another's opinion, but I see lots of value to that. And referring to Palmer Luckey yesterday, he was on the All In conference with Jason Calacanis. And he made a fucking show, man. Like he was invited there and he presented the company and all that. And after that, he said, Jason Calacanis, he made my life hell. He's Jason Calacanis and it's his crew. They are toxic people. And Jason Calacanis had made like comments on how he was dumb, to have supported Trump and so forth. Go watch it. It's kind of awkward, but I respect the braveness of this guy to like stand up like on the stage and tell like everyone that. And I think we also need like more debates. I think Joe Rogan was doing some debates on his podcast as well. So this is kind of getting monologue here. I want to have you speak. I'm here to ask you questions, but it's interesting. We're having like a nice conversation, and you're one of the only guests I could have that a conversation like that on the podcast. So yeah, thank you for showing up. Coming back to your career, unless you have other things to mention on the topic, but I want to talk about like DRYFINS. Why did you get in swimwear?
So I have a reputation. I didn't set this date. My reputation was that I get stuff done. And so I had a client of mine that had this idea. He went on his honeymoon to Hawaii with his wife. If you spend any time in the water, guys tend to chafe down when they get wet, and it's netting in a guy's suit. And so on his honeymoon, he figured out that if he tore the netting out and wore a pair of like undershorts underneath, he didn't chafe. So he came back and said, "Hey man, I just was I was in Hawaii and walking through the situation." And he goes, "We need to figure out a way to make shorts with like a compression short inside sewn in."
Yeah.
And at that point, there really was nobody doing that.
Yeah.
And it's not like I knew anything about retail or apparel. Literally, man, I didn't know anything. And so we were just kind of talking through that and running the idea around. I was like, you know what, let me look into this a little bit. And so I just started kind of figuring out like what the process was. I mean, look, Google is an amazing resource for an entrepreneur. And so, the first thing we did was we found somebody locally where I live here that to make a sample pair, just with the idea, and it was laughably terrible. Like we looked at it and went, "This is awful. This is the stupidest idea ever." But we were like, maybe there's something here. What do we do next after you have a really crappy sample? And so, I started Googling, looking at different things. They were like, "You need a designer." What do I find? A fashion designer. So I just started Googling, and after that night, the next morning I came in and I called a bunch of them, and I just happened across one in Portland, Oregon, and she's fantastic. And she's like, "Oh, yeah, you need a designer. I do this. This is how it works." So the thing about it for me when I didn't know anything, and kind of my proudest moment in entrepreneurship to this point is that I had no idea what I was doing. I had no network, no point of reference. And I built an entire network of people that design and manufacture and logistics and warehouse, something, it didn't exist for me at all. And that was a big thing. But what happened from when I found a designer was every step, I couldn't see 3 steps ahead. I saw 1 step ahead. So I had to trust that as I made that 1 step, that the next step I had to make would become clear after I made that next step. So you find a designer, and then she said, "Oh, well, you need to figure this out or this out." And I'm like, "Do you know anyone?" She said, "Maybe try this person." And like pulling a string on your sweater, you just start pulling it and pulling it and pulling it, and it takes you a place. And it took longer than I anticipated to get the final product back to us, 18 months. But when you start from absolute zero, getting it done at all is an amazing accomplishment. So it really was a cool thing to get going, and we've grown every year we've been in business. So I'm pretty stoked to have that happen.
Nice. Click on this link as this Zoom is coming to an end. The time for it. So let's join in that other room. All right.
Got it.
Okay, I'll see you there.